What's going on, movie fans? My name is Michael Weer, and I like to talk about movies. Today we're going to talk about the 7th entry into the Mission Impossible franchise, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. This is my personal most anticipated movie of the year 2023. I have been looking forward to this movie for so long, ever since it was announced way back in I think it was 19, that it was announced that this movie was happening with a Part 2 directly after it, and then COVID happened and everything got shoved, and then production got shoved, and then production got shoved again, and now it's 2023 and it's July, and we finally got this movie that I've been looking forward to for so long, and it did not disappoint in any way whatsoever. Let's do the review for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1.
None of our lives can matter more than this mission.
I don't accept that.
And so, guys, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is directed by Christopher McQuarrie, who's directed the several previous Mission Impossible movies, so you've got the same vision, the same guide of that director and Tom Cruise going into this movie. Of course, it stars Tom Cruise and several of the actors that are on his team, and we'll get to them in a little while, but let's talk about the plot for this movie. As far as the synopsis goes for this movie, it's pretty standard. You've got the Mission Impossible task force going after an item that, if it falls into the wrong hands, could cripple the rest of the world's ability to defend itself. So they're going up against some serious tech here. And of course, in this movie, it's an AI piece of tech, which is advanced with the times, which I've always appreciated with this series. It's not just, oh, there's this narc list like from the first movie. Like, now it's an advanced AI, and that's something that's really big right now, is this advanced AI. Could it control more things? Could we get AI to do more for us? And so someone has created a program that's basically a weapons defense program, but it's learned to take out other people's defense. So they're trying to find this thing and stop this thing before it falls in not only the bad hands, but even the people who claim to be the good hands. They just want to stop anybody from getting it. And that's basically your setup for the movie without me spoiling a bunch of things. Let me get into things that I liked about this movie. First thing I'm going to give praise to in this movie would be Tom Cruise. The man still has it. I think he just turned 60 or 61. The man is old as shit, and yet he still seems like he's got it. He is an action star, and he is fantastic at it. I love watching him do the action scenes in this movie. You know, I just watched Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and one of my biggest complaints from that movie is watching Harrison Ford go through some of those action scenes. It seemed so forced. The people would seemingly pull their punches because he just couldn't keep up with the action in that movie. Whereas Tom Cruise in this movie, again, I know he's nowhere near Harrison Ford's age, but just as a comparison of older actors still doing action movies, he's doing it so well, and I loved watching him in this movie, because if he couldn't match the action, the pace in this movie as this movie progressed, then it would have fallen flat like Indiana Jones did for me. But he could, and he did. Any of the action scenes with him, whether they're car chase scenes, foot chase scenes, they're just fantastic, and Tom Cruise excels at every single one of those. Next up, we'll talk about the action scenes in this movie, because we just briefly touched on them with Tom Cruise, and it's not just Tom Cruise doing the action in this movie, which I've always appreciated with the Mission Impossible franchise. They've added in new characters that can do action scenes, and they do so well to not only make those action scenes fun and exciting, but seem realistic, and I just appreciate that. Coming off of movies like Fast and Furious, this movie feels realistic, even though they're going after an almost sentient AI, and it's so much fun to watch. There's one action scene in particular between Tom Cruise, Pom Clementif, I think that's how you pronounce her name, the girl from Guardians of the Galaxy, and then one of the other henchmen, where they have him surrounded in this very narrow alley, and he has to fight both of them on either side, and it is just a fantastic fight scene. I loved that scene so much. But there's also a scene between Rebecca Ferguson's character and Isaiah Morales' character where they fight on a bridge. She has a sword, he has 2 knives, and it is a badass scene as well. And those are just 2 of the really gripping fights that happen, but there's so much action throughout, and it's so much fun. The final thing I really like about these action scenes is that they all serve the plot. And what I mean by that is sometimes you get an action movie and it's just generic action scene after action scene, and they feel like they've got to keep the action itself going because it's supposed to be an action-packed movie. And while this movie is an espionage spy movie like the rest of the Mission Impossible movies, anytime there's an action scene, it seems to serve the plot very well. There's a reason for it happening. It doesn't feel forced which I appreciate. Next up, we got to talk about the supporting cast. So outside of Tom Cruise playing Ethan Hunt, you've got Simon Pegg returning as one of his team members. You've got Rebecca Ferguson returning as one of his team members. And of course, Veen Raines also returning as one of his team members. I love those characters. They're always fun. The banter from them always plays off each other so well. And it's nice to see that again in this movie. And they didn't ruin it by making it too corny or anything like that. It was just an enjoyable riff between friends whenever they were on a mission together. And that really helps break up those scenes of action that you're getting every once in a while throughout this movie. You get them riffing with each other or messing with each other because they are on a mission and they are best friends. You also get people like Haley Atwell who show up in this movie as Grace, and I don't want to go into her story too much and spoil things, but I will say that she eventually is with Ethan on his team doing things with the MI6 crew, and it's so much fun to watch her act in this movie. You also get Henry Czerny, I think that's how you pronounce his name, I don't know, but Kittredge, if you've seen the first Mission Impossible movie, you know who I'm talking about with Kittredge, and I always wondered why he never came back in these movies, so to finally get him back and to see him still have that little bit of a scumbag attitude throughout the movie, I appreciated that. Like, they didn't make him full evil, but he definitely wasn't full good, and I appreciate that. Like, Alec Baldwin took over the MI6 front for the last several movies, and then he died in the last movie. Spoilers, I guess, for Mission Impossible 6, but he died in the last movie, and so I was wondering who they were going to make the head of the MI6 task force, and they brought Kittredge back into the mix. Final person of note is Vanessa Kirby, who plays the White Widow. I know I've gone through the entire cast here and talking about them, but I feel like all of them were very integral to this movie playing out. These are the main characters of the movie. The White Widow, who is Vanessa Kirby's character, plays the daughter of the woman from the first movie. We actually saw her show up in Mission Impossible 6, where she met Ethan Hunt for the first time, and she doesn't even know his real name till this movie, but I enjoyed what happens with her character in this movie as well. And so it's just really fun watching this core group of characters, but then this expanded group of side characters that also played into this plot so well. Now we've talked about the action, let me get into my next like, and that is the stunts for this movie. If you've been following any of the promotional material for this movie, you have seen Tom Cruise jumping off of a motorcycle, parachuting down a mountain. He actually did that stunt himself. It's always so exciting to see which stunt he's going to be doing, and they've been giving us a ton of this scene over the last several months. I remember sitting in Avatar watching them construct the bridge and showing you the before the movie preview that we got that was just so cool to watch them execute. But when you see it in this movie, the stakes are so high, you are on the edge of your seat. Like, is he really going to make it? Like, this is terrifying. So watching this happen and sort of how that scene ends, they have not given us any sort of clue how that scene ends. When you see him dive off that motorcycle, parachute down, but you're like, what's going to happen? And the way they end that is so much fun. It's a little bit random, but it is really fun what they do with that scene. But overall, the stunts in the rest of this movie are great. There's a great scene on a train, which I'm sure there's a ton of CGI action there, but just how they have these train cars and they're falling sort of one after the other. And again, that is in the preview. But as they're falling, you have Ethan Hunt and Grace trying to get through these train cars, and they're falling down. And so they're having to climb up the train cars. And it's just this intense action scene that is so much fun. I can't recommend it enough for you guys. I love the stunts in this movie. If you like watching wild stunts happen, you got to check out this movie. And finally, I'll get into my final like for this movie, and that is the storyline itself. I loved that they were able to take the Mission Impossible movies, they were able to take the spy franchise, sort of flip it on its head and say, let's give it a science fiction twist. I never would have expected that to work in these movies or even be attempted in these movies. But not only do they attempt it, but they executed it perfectly. I loved watching this. It's almost like watching the movie Eagle Eye without Shia LaBeouf and the rest of that plot. It is really cool to see Tom Cruise interact with this sort of sentient AI that's calling most of the shots behind the scenes. I really liked watching that. And they did a good job making the scene grounded, even though it had a good sci-fi twist to it. Now, if you're looking for any dislikes, that's where you're going to be disappointed in this review, because I don't have any. This movie worked for me on every single level. I love the action. I love the acting from every single actor in this movie. I love the stunts that were performed. And obviously, I love the storyline for this movie, and I don't have any dislike. This movie was a perfect movie for me here in 2023. Loved every second of it. Can't wait to watch this movie in theaters again, hopefully on another IMAX screen, because just seeing this movie on the biggest screen possible was so much fun. Overall, guys, I will say Mission Impossible 7 is a great time in the theater. I highly recommend you go check this thing out. I don't think it's going to be on IMAX screens for more than a week because Oppenheimer's coming out, and from what I understand, it took all the IMAX screens with it. So check this movie out now if you want to see it on a huge screen. If not, that's fine. Check it out on whatever screen you can. Mission Impossible 7 is a perfect movie in 2023. In my opinion. And that's my review for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to hit the like button. It's going to help the video, it's going to help the channel, and it's going to help me right here. I appreciate you guys taking time to watch my video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Well, guys, we made it to the end of the Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 review, and I had so much fun seeing this movie and so much fun talking about this movie. If you enjoyed this review and you want to check out any more of the content on my channel, well, first, I would love for you to subscribe because I've got a ton of content on there that you will enjoy. Secondly, you can check out all my 2022 reviews right there, or all my 2023 reviews right there.